Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue with this week's theme of taking it slow. Songs that feel slow. Maybe it's because of the tempo, maybe it's the pacing, maybe it's just the general heaviness of the track. Today, we're going to be diving into some Joy Division, which almost seems the exact opposite, at least based on artist name. Joy Division is, well, they're not always joyous, are they? But it's interesting to think of a division dedicated to joy kind of being lethargic. Let's dive into this Day of the Lords and see what Joy Division is bringing to the table today. It's a fun little thing over there.
This is the room, the start of it all. No portraits so fine, only sheets on the walls. I've seen the nights filled with blood sport in vain, and the bodies untamed, the bodies untamed. Where will it end? Where will it end? Where will it end? Where will it end?
It's interesting because this does feel like the beats in 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Primarily because that places the snare on 2 and 4. But there's so many sections that cram a lot of notes into a small space that has momentum to it.
With made its mark, and do you ride in? So distorted and thin, distorted and thin. Where will it end? Where will it end? Where will it end? Where will it end? This is the car at the edge of the road. There's nothing to stir, all the windows are closed. I guess you were right when we talked in the heat. There's no room for the weak, no room for the weak. Where will it end? Where will it end?
What does this chorus remind me of?
Where will it end? This is the room, the start of it all. From childhood through you, I remember it all. Oh, I've seen the nights filled with blood, sport, and pain, and the bodies untamed, the bodies untamed, the bodies untamed. Where will it end?
Ooh,
Where will it end?
oh, interesting note choice.
Where will it end? Where will it end?
tremolo over there? Maybe? I just had to make sure. How did that happen? Very intriguing. There's only one song in this playlist. I'm not sure how it found another one to play. Anyways, uh, I think this does fit for the theme. There are moments in it that feel momentous. There are several sections in here where we have consistent eighth notes on the bass kick, on the guitar. You have that dun 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 dun, and it feels like we're building into something. We have this intensity that's pushing forward. And of course, we're getting 2 hits per beat, which is quite a bit more than we get in pretty much everywhere else on the track. It's what creates this moment, this juxtaposition between the drive and the lethargy. Most of this track feels like it's dragging its feet. It is a bit of a slower tempo. I calculated out to 63 BPM, which is about 1 beat per second. So not exactly a brisk pace at all. Right in the middle, though, if you double that, you get 120, and that can feel pretty quick. And if you have that, you get into 30, which is funeral doom area. So we're kind of in the middle between speed and not really moving at all. So we'd be around in classical terms andante, which is pretty much right in the middle. In classical terms, we would be about an adagio, though technically adagio isn't just the tempo range, which is like high 40s to low 60s. This definitely sits inside that. But it also means to be very expressive, which I think this track is. I think it's a good reason to use adagio to describe it. Because alongside the generally slow tempo to this track, there's a lot of emphasis on specific notes. And also, when we get to the melody, while I don't think that every vocal line is expressive, I do love the largeness of delivery that we get towards the end of the track, as the vocals are more projected and more supported than they had been previously. So there's your music word of the day, adagio. Now, this slowness of tempo that we have this contrast in. It's slow, but it's also faster at times. It creates this push and pull on the track. Does it want to speed up, or is it happy with a decent pace? And I think when we pair that with the harmonic side of things, it begins to answer some of those questions and present more questions itself. The opening of this track, I thought, felt rather moody. Definitely has a bit of a negative emotional value to it. Maybe a little bleak, but it wasn't long until we hit some chords that were a bit brighter. And I found that generally the verse bounces between the two of these. At first, I was thinking, oh, okay, we have this slow tempo, we have this brooding tone. Yeah, that works well. But then we all have these, again, spurts of brightness. I don't know the emotion that I would tie to it, though. It isn't joy. It's not as simple as that. Some sort of release, though. Elation, possibly, but it's momentary. We do oscillate between these two sides and not strictly between them. It's a spectrum that we slide between. The chorus only elevates this distinction between these two emotive elements, as the very first chord feels rapturous. There is such a large outburst of, I don't know, reverence, maybe, of freedom. Maybe I just feel free in this moment because it is such an expanded chord compared to what we had heard before. But the chorus itself only starts here. It eventually does oscillate into some darker, brooding, moodier chords as well. But I do feel that just as the first chord is more positive than any of the positive feelings from the verse, the negative elements are exaggerated here as well. The chorus is more of what we had in the verse in both directions. Is this a moody song? Absolutely, at times. Is this a song about finding release from, I don't know, stress, grief, pain, whatever? Yeah, it's that too, in equal measure. I find it interesting this comes off of the album Unknown Pleasures, because I feel like this ambiguity to both emotion, but also the duality of the emotion kind of lines up with the album title pretty well. And I'm curious if the rest of the tracks on the album explore this same sort of vague element where I can feel that I know what I'm feeling. I just don't necessarily have the vocabulary to explore it because it isn't simple. It's not a sad song, not a happy song. Those are simple ideas. There's more complexity to this. And I think when we look at the vocals too, we can find a lot of that. The vocals start out with a bit of a dark, lower pitch, kind of focuses on something down here a little bit, almost veers into the realm of like goth rock for a moment. And being that we do start off on a slow pace with brooding chords, I thought this was also very appropriate. It was interesting when the chords went off in a different direction and the vocals didn't change that I started to feel this friction in the emotional resonance of this track. But as we get further into the song, we find that the vocals become more excited, possibly. What started out in the lower range has bumped up probably about an octave or so. And instead of being low and quiet, it is now bright and belted, lots of forward projection. It is loud, it is vibrant. I don't think the words have changed, particularly in the chorus at least, and there was some lines I think that were repeated from the first verse of the track, so we might even be revisiting some non-chorus stanzas, but it's delivered in a manner of strength, of ownership, not doing this because they have to. That lethargy is gone, and instead it's replaced with a type of passion. Now, whether that passion is due to positivity of really enjoying this or negativity, maybe needing to say this the way this is delivered because of some sort of internal struggle to get the need to get these ideas out and make sure that they're heard. I don't know. We'll dive into that when we get into the lyrics. But I did enjoy the journey of the vocals because honestly, we don't have too much of that anywhere else. This is a track that is fairly stagnant from start to finish on the musical side. We have the oscillation. We also have the oscillation of intensity from the verse being lower intensity to the chorus being higher intensity and back and forth there. But aside from bouncing between two extremes, the song kind of has a similar atmosphere throughout. When you listen to the individual instrumentation, there's not a lot of variation there either. We do get additional layers as we get into the end of the track, but the bass part throughout most of this song is fairly similar. It has its verse and its chorus riff, and it just works within those two. The drums and guitar kind of follow the same pattern here. They have their ideas, they work within them. All of these ideas together collectively create the moody atmosphere throughout this track. And as I mentioned, we get variance in intensity of the emotion, but the emotion itself doesn't really change. So we have a track that sometimes feels pretty lethargic, taking its time getting through the track, but sometimes feels like it's rushing, trying to get through a moment. It feels low energy, matching that lethargy, but it also feels high energy. There's sections that are less layered, sections that are more layered, but overall, it doesn't really change its vibe. I'm curious if there is an artistic reason behind this. Maybe the concept of oscillation fits well within what the lyrics will be singing about, but it also has a functional element to it as well. As stagnant as the emotional side of things can be on this, having the track change in its intensity, change in its volume and layering and vocal projection has the song leading on a sort of contrast that allows it to never stagnate in attention. Usually with tracks that are very focused in on doing one thing, I will kind of I will lose my attention to it. It's not to say that it's a bad song, it's not to say I'm not enjoying it, but I just tend to like more dynamic qualities in my composition when I listen to music. And yet, I never really got bored of this track. There was certainly a part around the 3 minute mark where I was not as engaged with it as I was at the beginning, but not long after this, we moved into the final section of this track, which, yeah, dude, there's a lot of moving parts here. The vocals are coming in stronger. There's some neat stuff to enjoy. So even as my attention was starting to wane, they immediately changed things up to grab my attention again. And that's what I think is really interesting here is that they found a way to sort of be monotonous, to do one specific thing, but not be boring in that execution. And through that lens, I think they absolutely killed it in crafting this sound and executing on their vision while also not succumbing into, I hate using this word because it's very subjective, but boring music. Slow music can sometimes be boring. And I don't think that they really land in that realm. I think they keep things interesting. And so that's why I wonder if maybe it was an economical choice, something to, functionally for the song to not grow boring over time, to stay interesting through the entire runtime. But also the oscillation could very easily tie into specific themes that they might be exploring. So I'm kind of have questions here. Let's get them answered. Let's dive into some lyrics and see if we can figure out if the oscillation is more functional or more thematic. While there's certainly no oscillation in the lyrics, even talking about the emotive side of the chord progressions presented on this track, I don't really feel anything there, at least not in the lyrics. This is rather bleak overall. The first verse, which is repeated at the end of the track, states that this is the room, the start of it all, no portrait so fine, only sheets on the wall. So the beginning of everything that happened to this person, possibly, started in this room, and there's nothing here. Nothing adorns the walls, nothing makes it stand out. It is just a box with sheets on the wall. It says, I've seen the nights filled with blood sport and pain, and the bodies obtained. So, violence, pain, may be mental, but certainly physical, and bodies obtained, assuming that the blood sport ends in death rather than stopping it before someone dies. The bodies have to go get picked up and transported. They're obtained for some reason that's not followed through on. Because then we have the refrain, which I've been labeling as the chorus. it just repeats the phrase, where will it end? So we have lines in the sand. This is one line. Now, this isn't where things end. Well, maybe there's something worse. Maybe things will end when we reach a more grotesque, a more violent line. Verse 2 says that these are your friends from childhood. They goaded you on and demanded more proof. Withdrawal pain is hard. It can do you right in, so distorted and thin. So we have someone who abuses drugs here. They're going through withdrawal. Their body is thin and frail and distorted. I think that's an interesting word there. But the previous part, your friends from childhood who goaded you on and demanded more proof. More proof of what? Much like the first verse, I'm kind of left with a question here. Regardless, maybe the bullying, I mean, it says that they were your friends, but maybe they weren't the best of friends. I don't know. But maybe these experiences from childhood is what led this person to drugs, and now they are addicted and in a very terrible place in their life. Where will it end? Verse 3 says this is the car at the edge of the road with nothing disturbed. All the windows are closed. I guess you were right when we talked in the heat. There's no room for the weak. This feels like it's alluding to suicide. The idea that there's no room for the weak, but also the fact that there's a car at the edge of the road. Now, I'm not sure about the line about it not being disturbed with the windows being closed, but that almost feels like it was discarded neatly, as if someone drove to this point, rolled the windows up, turned the car off, closed the door, locked it as you would, parking it anywhere else. They just left, though. The edge of the road. I mean, what would that represent? Metaphorically, it's the end, which I think lines up with suicide well, but what would be next? A forest? A desert? Maybe just wandering out into wherever? I don't know. Where will it end? The general gist here is atrocities. Or, man, that sounds a bit too large because all of these seem to be singular events focusing on individuals. But human catastrophe? How life can get someone down, force them to do things that are destructive to themselves on varying levels. I'm still not really sure what's up with the first one, the blood sport and the sheets on the wall. But the second one is certainly about drug abuse, and the third one is about depression and suicide. Is this song just about the trauma that can come through sheer existence, being in society? I don't know. But I do see an escalation here, at least from the drug abuse to the suicide. And the first one, I'm still not really sure what that's about, but it doesn't feel as intense as the other two stanzas. This escalation works with the phrase, where will it end? Why do we keep pushing to that next level? Is there a place where we can stop this suffering? And see, that's rather bleak. I think that works with the opening chords of this track, but I find it really interesting against some of the brighter chords that we hear in this song, especially at the beginning of the chorus. But I suppose that's where my thoughts end on this. I'm going to pass the mic over to y'all. Joy Division, Day of the Lords. What did you think of this? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own thoughts, opinion, or perspective on this? Let me know. Put all of that and anything else you'd like to add into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.